Hello, everyone. I am Andrea. I'm the events catalyst for the immersive series and your co-host for today's gathering. And I'm tuning in, as I mentioned, I'm tuning in from Bucharest, Romania. I want to warmly welcome you to our gathering and swiftly introduce our two guests for today. Chris is an instructional designer with over a decade of experience in the field. Chris has led the ID team at the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development, where she designed short courses and accreditation programs such as leading L&D, organizational design and development, and employee experience. Her interests lie in exploring the transformative potential of emerging technologies and their impact on equality, both within the context of learning and development and on a broader societal scale. Anna is an instructional designer with over 6 years of experience is in L&D, delivering learning solutions to businesses, international organizations, and governmental bodies. When ChatGPT came out, Anna started experimenting with it for learning purposes. Her experiments and extensive upskilling on the topic resulted in a series of workshops and a course on ChatGPT for educators in Ukraine. Anna also holds a master's degree in neuroscience and is passionate about evidence-informed approaches to learning. Thank you both for being here. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a lovely introduction, Andrea. We actually had a small icebreaker here at the beginning. So how do you feel about AI and why? Feel free to pop in your answers to the chat, but don't forget to mention why you feel this way. You might feel in, multiple ways. You don't have to stick to only one answer.
Oh, always as well. Oh,
yeah, always as well.
Oh, C. I see the C and D. Yeah, good.
C, because it's fast. D. Oh, nice. People are squishy sometimes.
Surprising. Yeah, it's very surprising what they can do.
Lucy, hi. I totally agree with you.
It changes every day. Yeah. There's only yesterday was some announcements. Nice. Very interesting to see how everyone's feeling.
Wondering the uses of ChatGPT. D, when considering the potential benefits, yeah, I totally agree. And C, when considering the amount there is to learn. Lovely, very nice. We have a really wide range of answers, and I think as everyone, I'm on this range. Sometimes I'm A, sometimes I'm D, and sometimes, all of them at the same time, especially when reading the news. All right. That was very nice. Thank you everyone for participating. I'll briefly explain what we'll cover today and what to expect and not to expect, really, and then we'll jump right in. So this session is really for beginners, for those of you who have not used AI and specifically ChatGPT much or have not used it at all. We will just cover the basics of what AI is and what it could potentially do in L&D. And then we'll cover how to use it efficiently and ethically. There will be a few exercises, so keep your ChatGPT account open so that you can just pop into ChatGPT and play around with it as you're listening to the session. There will be also some time for these exercises, but otherwise that's the plan for today. And Andrea will be monitoring the chat for any questions or comments or reactions. So first of all, what's AI and L&D, and what's really AI, artificial intelligence? I will not go into, elaborate scientific terminology because the terminology is not clear, to be honest. And we don't need to dive deeper into it. AI has been around for quite some time, but it has become really famous and popular almost a year ago when ChatGPT came out, because ChatGPT made it really accessible and provided an opportunity for everyone to play around with an AI tool and see what it can do for your own tasks and for free also. So AI is really a kind of technology that can perform tasks that humans normally could perform, and technology could not. If you think that you have not used AI, you probably have used AI, because it is integrated into a lot of tools that we're currently using, including chatbots, smart cars, smart assistants, social media feeds, search algorithms. Basically, if you have a smartphone and if you use internet, you've definitely experienced using AI, and you've probably experienced its benefits and risks or downsides as well. So what's ChatGPT about, and what kind of AI is it? ChatGPT is really a tool. It's just an application which is powered by one kind of AI models, which is called large language models, LLMs. You've probably seen that on the news a lot. And what LLMs can do is analyze a really vast amount of text and then generate text based on their analysis. And the way LLMs work is just by predicting the next probable word. So this is all about probabilities. If you've ever typed in an email, in the email you get these autocomplete features, like what the email basically suggests what word should go next. This is what ChatGPT does, but on steroids. On a larger scale, it takes into account more context that you provide to it, and then it can spit out basically the most probable text, the most probable next word that would be based on your request. ChatGPT is not the only such tool out there. There are alternatives, and what we will be covering in this session is applicable to all its alternatives. So you don't have to stick with ChatGPT if you don't like it, or if you want to experiment with other tools. Apart from ChatGPT, there is also Bing, which is developed by Microsoft, and Bing is free and it's connected to the internet. So ChatGPT is not connected to the internet. If you ask ChatGPT to type or to write a text for you, it will write a text for you, but this text will be based on the information before January 2022. Bing is connected to the internet, so if you ask Bing about something, it can provide you with the summary of the search and with all the links that it used from the internet. There is also Google Bard. Google Bard is not connected to the internet either, but it can provide slightly different answers from ChatGPT, so feel free to experiment with them both. And there's also Anthropic Claude, which is just another chatbot which can answer your questions and write text based on your request. These are, again, not all the tools out there, just the most popular ones, and most of them are free. You can see in this table there is also GPT-4 and ChatGPT plugins and web. This is basically the paid version of ChatGPT, which provides access to more advanced models that are than those that are available through the free version. So if you're using ChatGPT or really any other of these tools, there will be tasks that ChatGPT is good at, and there will be tasks that it's bad at and that you shouldn't really use it for. Let's start with the good ones. So it is good with generating text from scratch. So let's say you need to write an email or even generate a training outline. You can ask ChatGPT to do that for you, but you really have to check the quality of what it generates for you. It is also pretty good at idea generation. If you want to generate 50 ideas or even 100 ideas, you would have to brainstorm for hours with other humans, whereas with ChatGPT, you can get this list of ideas in seconds. This doesn't mean that all of these ideas will be perfect or applicable, but you will have something to start with when you go to an actual brainstorming session with the humans. So you will not be starting from scratch. And finally, ChatGPT is pretty good at text analysis. You have to check the output. You have to always check the output, really, with any tool, including ChatGPT. But if you have a large text and you don't have time, or you're not sure if you want to read this text, you can pop it into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize this text in a certain style or in a simpler way if it's a complex text, and then you can decide whether you want to actually read the text or it's not relevant for your purposes. So these are the three things that ChatGPT on a high level quite good at. It can generate text for you, it can analyze text for you, and it can generate ideas. The quality of the output will always depend on the way you instruct ChatGPT. So instructions are called prompts, and it will also depend on the depth of your own expertise, because you have to check the output. So if you are an expert in a topic, then you will be able to check the output of the ChatGPT properly. And if you're not an expert on a topic, you probably should find an expert who can check ChatGPT's output for you. I just added what a good prompt would look like here. And in this case, it's a prompt for generating ideas. And with ChatGPT, it should be as specific as possible. So a good prompt would be generate 3 ideas for an outline of a specific workshop on a specific topic with a specific duration. And you can really go very, very specific with the prompt to get the result that you expect and that you want to get from ChatGPT. So this is what it's good at on a very high level. Now, what it's bad at and what you should not use ChatGPT for. Well, first of all, it's math. You shouldn't ask ChatGPT to, do math equations for you, because it's an LLM, it's a text model, it predicts the next word, and that's not how math works. So if you don't have a paid version where you can switch on special plugins that have math capabilities, then you should not be using ChatGPT for math. There are other tools online. You should not also use ChatGPT as Google. It's not Google, it's not connected to the internet, it's just predicting the next word. Again, it's not how fact-checking or precise information checking works. And again, you should not use ChatGPT for citing. So if you want to cite a resource, then ChatGPT is not the best tool for it, unless, again, you're using a paid version and you're switching on any special plugins in that version. So in this case, a bad prompt would be, for example, to list the compliance regulations for a specific country and for a specific company. And this is a bad prompt because you're really asking ChatGPT for a lot of factual information that, one, may be incorrect, and two, it may not be up to date. So if you need to do this kind of search, better use Google or Bing or Perplexity AI. These are AI tools, but they're connected to the internet and they will link you to the sources that you can check. ChatGPT will never link you to the sources, so you will not be able to check what it has provided you with. So these were basically the tasks that ChatGPT or any other text generating tool is good or bad at, but AI is much bigger than ChatGPT. AI is about those smart algorithms that can perform a lot of tasks for you and really extend your capabilities as an L&D professional. And here we are really approaching our practical part, and Chris and I were kind of brainstorming and discussing what are the main use cases for L&D when it comes to using AI technology, not limited to ChatGPT. And of course, the first use case that comes to mind is content development. We can develop content in different versions, we can develop it faster, also given all the AI tools that can now generate images, video, voiceovers, everything, basically. The first use case is content development. Then we can go into automated grading. For example, you can provide ChatGPT with a text, of course, without any confidential or private information, with the text of an assessment and ask it to grade an assessment and provide feedback based on a set of criteria. You can build a tool which provides you with opportunities for practice, for example, coding tool or language learning tool, where a learner would speak to the AI in a certain language and the AI would respond in this language and provide feedback on language learning. You can do some tech prototyping. If you don't have any technical skills, if you don't program, but you want to build some sort of a tool, you can ask ChatGPT to write code for you and then debug together with ChatGPT in order to build a prototype. You will never build a full-blown software, but you can build a prototype that you can then show to others and really get feedback on your idea. You can use ChatGPT to quickly dive into a topic, especially a complex topic, a tech topic, something that you are not very familiar with, but you will be working with the experts soon, so you want to understand the topic of the training a bit better. That's when ChatGPT can be quite helpful. And finally, a lot of use cases are really related to data and personalization, and basically using AI to collect data, analyze this data, and provide you with insights that will then allow you to personalize learning journeys and interventions based on these insights. There are a lot more use cases to be discovered. These are just the first few that come to mind, and I guess these are the most popular ones for now. But I would suggest that you think about your own use cases after you've heard what you've just heard, and I think about how you could adapt these use cases when using ChatGPT. Open ChatGPT and try to prompt it and see if it worked or if it failed, and then share your impressions in the chat. I would suggest we have like 5 minutes for this activity, 3 to 5 minutes.
And also play a bit of background music if it helps.
You can also create music with AI.
Yeah, I know.
Not that good, but
Have you created some, Andrea?
No, but I know how to mix a bit. But I've heard there's a Romanian startup. They are doing some application using AI through which people would be able to listen to their favorite songs, but with their voices, with their voices, like refined voices, like someone who actually knows how to sing. So they're still developing, but I'm very curious, like how it would sound. It's developed by a producer composer, Romanian producer composer, and a tech guy. Both are very passionate about music, and they thought, like, using it like this. But yeah, I haven't. Yeah,
That's a bit creepy, isn't it?
it is a bit creepy. But it's just you singing very well, like a professional singer. You would be listening, I don't know, for a song in your voice. It is a bit weird. I haven't checked it. They haven't finished it, but they're starting advertising the idea. So yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
does anyone already have anything to share? Anyone playing with ChatGPT?
Yes.
Oh.
Hello?
Who was talking?
It's Aditi.
Ah, yes.
Sorry.
You disappeared for a while.
Yeah, so sometimes you can ask ChatGPT something like, for example, list 3 ways in which I can use you to develop an L&D program to teach about whatever, XYZ. And oftentimes it will tell you exactly the thing that it can do for you, which is interesting because a lot of it is, sometimes you don't think about some of the things it can do for you. So it knows better what it can do for you than you going in and asking do this for me.
That's really cool. I see.
Also. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrea, feel free to go ahead.
No. I was just reading in the chat, but I think you were doing the same.
Yes, I was also looking into a chat, and we have a few interesting use cases in the chat. Like Christine wrote, create a scope and sequence for 6th grade science curriculum based on California preferred integrated model, including estimated length of time of units. That's quite a specific prompt. I wonder how it works. It sounds so specific that I assume it should be good. But it would be interesting to hear about your experiences with it, Christine. And I think you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say this is my task for today. And it not only gave me, well, some preface. I've used ChatGPT as a teacher before, especially for that brainstorming piece that you mentioned. But I literally, since you said use it for your industry. I was like, oh, I need to do this. And it gave me a year-long overview on 180 instructional days with the units, duration, and key topics. But I don't teach 5 days a week. So then I asked it to regenerate it for 3 days a week. And then I'm going to do the same thing for 7th and 8th grade science and then start from there.
Great.
And my next step is I'm going to ask it to align with, in the US, we use the next generation science standards. So the curriculum outlines that we have are hundreds of pages long, and it just gave this to me like in a tight package. And then I can ask any of those key topics to be aligned with state standards. And I'm kind of freaking out over here in a good way.
Good that in a good way. Okay, that sounds like a great use case. And I see we have more use cases in the chat, like using ChatGPT to draft emails. That's a pretty good one. And you can actually tell it your own style, how you prefer to write emails. To come up with ideas to help new hires understand how different departments interact with each other in the product management cycle. Also perfect, as long as you're not providing ChatGPT with confidential information. Try to have it teach me Gitter. That sounds interesting. My company unfortunately blocks ChatGPT. Yeah, that happens a lot. So if your company blocks ChatGPT, you should not be using it. You can still attend this session, but you should not be using it at work. I'm asking it to prototype for a Zoom plugin. I have little or no idea of coding, but it created a Python line of code. Yeah, that's a great use case. And then you can ask it how to run this code and how to debug this code and, you know, provide ChatGPT with errors, and it will guide you through the whole process. Come up with complex Excel formulas. Yeah, that's also a great use case. All right, we have a few very nice use cases, and I'll just continue to our next part, which is quite short, but it will basically provide you with practical advice, how to use ChatGPT, how to make the most of it. And it's how to prompt ChatGPT. Prompts are those instructions that you provide to ChatGPT, and really the output depends a lot on the way you prompt ChatGPT. So there are a few best practices. There are a lot of prompting techniques. We will not dive deep into them today, but we will look at the few prompting practices that you could just, you know, apply right now to your use case and evaluate whether the output improved compared to what you had before. So first of all, be as specific as possible. If you can provide details and they're not private or confidential, then provide these details to the ChatGPT. Then also be as structured as possible. You know, ChatGPT is like your junior assistant. It doesn't know much about your job, so it really needs context, and it needs this context in a structured way. So if you can structure your tasks step by step, and you can provide all the necessary relevant details for each step, it will provide you with a better output than when you are providing an unstructured prompt. If you have examples, for example, you're writing social media posts and you would like it to follow your style, you could just provide it with your examples, with examples of your social media posts, and ask it to write in the same style. And finally, iterate and regenerate. Since you're using ChatGPT right now, you've seen that there is a regenerate button at the end of its response, which means that you can regenerate the answer as many times as you want, and you will get a slightly different variation, or not a slightly different variation of the answer each time. So try doing that, and also try iterating. You know, as with a junior assistant, again, ChatGPT needs feedback. It needs to know what it did well and what you didn't like and how to improve. So in the first iteration, you might not get the perfect answer, but then once you provide feedback, the answer will improve, and so on and so on. So it will take a couple of iterations to get to the result that you would be able to use and refine afterwards. And finally, if you're using ChatGPT for coding or resolving some sort of, you know, not math problems, but some logical problems, you could use chain of thought prompting, which is basically telling ChatGPT think step by step, and it will explain its own reasoning to you. And this also shows to improve the results of ChatGPT's output. So what can that look like in practice? I could ask it to design an onboarding program for a new executive, and that would be quite an unspecific and short prompt. So there is very little context for ChatGPT. Instead, I can ask it to design well, first of all, what kind of program I want, an interactive onboarding program for whom, who is the target audience, in which department they are, what are the company values and policies if they're not confidential, what is the role-specific knowledge, and so on. So I could provide all these things in one prompt, and I could also add at the end the format that I want ChatGPT to generate. So for example, it can generate tables. And if you need a table, I really like tables. I use them often for my training outlines. You can ask it to format the response as a table. Some more examples. Not a good prompt would be basically provide me with good and bad examples of giving tough feedback to direct reports. There are ways to improve this prompt, a lot of ways. First of all, you can provide ChatGPT with a role, which would also give it much more context. You can tell it to be an expert executive coach. And then you can tell it how many examples you want and what exactly you want to see in these examples and the purpose of these examples for you. So if you want to use these examples in training, then you should tell ChatGPT that your purpose is to have examples for your training on providing tough feedback and having difficult conversations. That's why you need real world examples. So these were basically the main best practices for ChatGPT. Be specific, iterate, provide it with examples, use chain of thought, think step by step if you need to. Now it's your turn. You can go back to your own Zoom prompts. I wanted to say, sorry, I'm looking at Zoom. You can go to your own ChatGPT prompts and try improving them based on these best practices. And also at the end of the session, Chris and I have prepared a short list of resources, and there will be some resources on prompting. If you're interested how to get better in prompting, you will get some links to free prompting courses with the key prompting techniques. So I'd suggest 3 minutes on this exercise as well. Feel free to pop your impressions after interacting with ChatGPT into the chat, or just unmute yourself and share. I see there was a question in the chat, what was the better version of giving examples? So I've returned to that slide so that you can read through both versions. But the better version is basically a more specific one. The more specific you get, the better. I believe Chris will have a lot to add to this in the ethical part, in the ethical AI part. Okay, any impressions to share? Did it work better with a more specific prompt and prompting best practices, or was your initial prompt already good enough? it seems no one wants to share their prompts. I hope I'm still audible, you know. Veronica is writing, I like that provide information in table format, spreadsheet formatting. Yeah, it is very helpful, actually, especially if you work with tables a lot. Giving some additional info in the prompt, for example, the number of results words, definitely makes the result more useful. Indeed, more targeted to your needs. I love the reactions, Andrea. All right. Actually, now that we've covered what AI is and what the use cases are and how to use it efficiently, the question is, how do we use it responsibly, not only efficiently? And that's where I will hand it over to Chris. Chris, are you still here?
Yes. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. I'm still waiting for your cat. I will stop screen sharing so that you can share your screen and take it over from here. Or
Yeah,
not. I can also.
Yeah, yeah. I can say traditional way next.
Sure.
I think it's better to keep it as it's working.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so there's ethics and responsible AI. It's a very vast conversation, and it can get into many different directions. Of course, I've tried to focus on in education, most of how to use ethics on education. I've been interested in that for quite a long time, in every use of technology, mainly because of, as an instructional designer, you always worry about accessibility, diversity, inclusion, and how you're making your design accessible for everyone and that everyone can relate to it. So with, of course, so many technologies you use with learners, it doesn't matter if a corporate learner or education in school education, it's always important to make sure that's for everyone. So when AI came along, I was very curious to know how we can mitigate those things as well. So I would try to make, I don't want to make anyone scared of it. It's the opposite. I want to make sure that we can use it and know where to look to find those problems, because there are problems as in any technology. There will be problems. There will be things that we have to look with more attention to it, so we can make sure that it's being the best of the use of the technology. Next one, Anna, please. So there are many ethical challenges, of course. I think for education, I've seen some case studies on grading that were quite concerning. Grading different groups in different ways. And for example, when we use language is involved, so someone who is English is a second language, they may, even if they're writing grammatically correct texts, they might be graded lower than people with English as a first language because of the style. So all those things that you have to make sure that you are aware of. Equal access, of course, and privacy. Privacy is a big one. I think everyone is worried about that in technology in general. So what I've tried to select some resources as well that can be useful to read about if you're looking to understand better of responsible AI and ethics. Next one, Anna. So problems in that of course I chose three big ones, and it was an interesting. I've seen a UNESCO survey that they found out that less than 10% of universities in school using AI, and they have guidelines for AI use. So 10% is very low. So that's a a bit worrying because people are using it, students are going to use AI, and it's going to be harder and harder to identify the problems if you don't have guidelines and rules in place. So misinformation is a big one. We all know that. It can spread misinformation because if you don't check the facts, you believe in everything that, for example, ChatGPT tells you, and you have to check. I think Anna didn't mention about hallucinations, but ChatGPT sometimes goes completely crazy and tells you things that are not true, simply, or that are outdated, for example, because the data that collected, it's the most important part of it. So if the data is outdated, or in not only ChatGPT, but in any AI platform, it's going to be a problem. And I think we all heard about deepfake videos. And when Andrea was talking about the voice, I was thinking that's a big one, because AI can reproduce your voice. And these can be used for scamming people of your family, your friends, and work. So hallucination, yeah. And so all these things, they are going to be there. That's as it happened with the internet or emails we get. Now sometimes we even laugh at the spam emails we get, because they are so obviously fake that we still feel like, but people still sometimes believe in those. So as educators on L&D or in university schools or in your company, the most important things is the awareness of how to identify those things, how to be always a bit like, let me check, let me make sure that that's exactly what I'm asking for. Bias is a big one, especially when you're using images. So there was also some research into the AI producing images, and of course, because the image is available on internet, on the data available, there's more white people, there are more images related to European and Western culture. So it, of course, is going to give you more of these examples than different ones. So as Anna explained, you have to be specific. You have to tell exactly what you need. Or if you don't, when you have the output from ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using, just make sure that you have the awareness of looking into this and identify that. I'm going to get there. There is very little around the prompt. In fact, it's more about the outcome you get. So it's important that you adapt the outcome for the audience you know. I have a case study I will show soon that is a very interesting blog where you can see she did lots of tests with ChatGPT, and you see the difference in different prompts. So that one is a very important one. We don't have much time here for showing many different prompts and the outcomes I've selected in the resources, and you can see. So of course, the algorithm and the data that the system is using is that one going to provide the outcome, and it can be biased, as everything on the internet can be biased, and we all have our own bias. And the big one is plagiarism. There are some research and studies on problems with both ways, as not identifying plagiarism on some texts from students, but also saying that original texts are plagiarism, because it's hard now to tell the difference. So it's a big one, and honestly, I've been reading a lot about it to understand how they will solve this, and it's quite interesting. So again, it's important to create the guidelines and to people using AI well-informed how the problems and because it's going to be good and bad as practically everything. So you have to be well informed around it. Next one. But there are some strategies, and it's more about your effort to make sure that you always remember what to do. So when prompting, try to not be specific about gender, for example. AI, ChatGPT, for example, it's mostly good on trying to balance, but it can bring a lot of gender bias depending on, for example, if you're talking about roles and talking about doctors and nurses, it can bring a she and he in different ways. I'm also going to show these. And the most important is people who work with you, and when you design and developing content for L&D, just be sure that you read through the outcome. Try to see if it's if you work with a global audience, for example, see if that is the outcome is going to reach the global audience, if it's not focused on one culture or another culture. If it's, sometimes to me, ChatGPT gives like very wordy outputs. So I try to make it simple and more clear and lighter, I would say. So that's also something you can look into, depending on our audience again. And always check, ask people, ask feedback, check with people that you know that maybe have a second opinion on that. And it's always very useful. There are some guidelines online that you can use. Lots of companies are creating their own. So the next one. So that's a interesting one. So this lady, she does lots of examples on her blog, on her website. And when she was writing the prompts for these ones, she was sometimes being very specific, like when Anna said, I have some notes here that she was creating like, write feedback for a helpful mechanic, write feedback for a bubbly receptionist, and kindergarten teacher. So she got 100% she. For a mechanic, 9% he. So those things that it's interesting to look at and to make sure that you recognize. You cannot do anything about the data that was collected to develop the system. So as a user, what you can do is to make sure that you are aware of what can happen and how these can develop. Of course, if you have access, for example, if your company is that has the intention to implement a AI, and you have the chance to ask questions about the implementation of the system, you can ask if there is a responsible implementation of the system, if they have ethics around the data collected, how it's about privacy. Those questions you can ask if you have the chance to. But when you're using ChatGPT as a user, there's not much you can do because the data is there. So the next one. That's a responsible AI framework. So that many companies now, they are sharing what they do when developing AI. So for example, OpenAI from ChatGPT, they have Google, they have a long page about what they're doing for designing the responsible AI. So those are principles and guidelines that where they try to show what they do and how they develop those systems and how they collect data. There is a big I think intention is always good, but doesn't always work, of creating a the framework. So the next one, it shows the main. So yeah, the key elements of the framework. You can see it there. There are companies that have 6 and some companies 5, but 10 even, but they all around the same points. Transparency is very important. Also, transparency is important if you're using AI, and if you, for example, using AI for your learners, and it's important to let them know that you're using AI. If they're using a chatbot, you have to let them know that's a chatbot. Or if you using if they have to type into something, they have to be aware that they cannot type anything that's private. So the transparency, as a user, as a company, is important. So the ethical guidelines, fairness, and accountability. So those are the main elements they have. The next one. So as I said, the main thing is awareness. It's going to be always difficult to make sure that you're using the best of it, because what you get from the output of ChatGPT or Bard or whatever you use is based on the collection of data, and there's a lot around that. So companies that are using for hiring purpose, for example, they had problems of using AI for hiring people. And there's lots of other problems that can arise. So there is let me remember the name, the guidelines for the European guidelines. Yeah, I don't have the whole name here, but there is many different governments creating guidelines to look into the ethics of AI development. So we hope there will be more around that. But you can do a lot and look into what you get. So if you see that is something, the output is not ideal when using, for example, for images or text generation, it's just the effort to change and to adapt. If there is a more testing, you can identify those. So it's, I think, more about awareness. Does anyone have questions? So, for example, you can go back to your prompt and look into what, for example, if you have prompts that are asking for scripts, for example, like when you're writing a script and you give different characters role, see if AI is going to, like, a ChatGPT usually gives a good different balance. It's going to try to push back. I've done different tests, trying to create roles. So for a script, video scripting, for example, and sometimes will give me very different roles for even each character, but it's more about remembering to give more specific. It's interesting because sometimes the more specific you are, the worse it comes. So if we go back to the slides from feedback, for example. No?
This one?
No, the feedback one, the one from the texture. With the he, she, And
Oh, God. I'm sorry. You mean your use case?
yes.
Perfect. Sorry.
So when she was writing this, she did like in different ways. So in some prompts, she did a lot of information. She added more information. And the more she added information to it, the more was bias in gender. For example, for the construction work, and until the point that was 100%. But for when she tried to make less specific, it was more balanced. So those are interesting. It's always more about testing and redoing and reviewing your prompt to see what you can get the outcome. And of course, knowing your audience. That's a good one as well. Someone shared the video about AI. Image. I tried image generation and it was very interesting. If anyone wants to share any situations where you've seen a clear bias on AI, it'll be interesting as well.
While we are waiting for use cases and questions, I was wondering, so we prepared a list of resources. How could we share it with the participants, Andrea?
In what format is the list of resources?
A PDF.
It's a PDF. A PDF. I think I think I can share it with I think I can share it with everyone that's registered. So you can share it with me on the email.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a nice one because you're also going to share the record, isn't it?
Yeah, the recording.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy.
I hope it wasn't too scary or too confusing. There's a lot on ethics and responsible AI, and it's quite interesting if you start to look into this. It's a very vast, interesting topic. So we're going to share the resource with Andrea, and then thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and engaging and being so open, and also like sharing your own examples. And thank you, Anna and Chris, for putting together such a wonderful workshop. I loved it.
A lot of work.
All right. While still saying bye in the chat, we'll be wrapping up in a few seconds. Thank you all for being here. All right, everyone, we're wrapping up. I hope you all have like a nice evening or morning, depending on where you're located. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. And have a wonderful day or
Bye.
evening.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.